Savings starts with Xfinity. Get a great price on Xfinity Internet. Plus, ask how to get an eligible 5G phone on us. And for a limited time, $300 back when you add Xfinity Mobile. Go to Xfinity.com/start saving. Call 1-800-XFINITY or visit a store today. Restrictions apply.
Welcome to the Screen the Screener College Basketball Podcast with your hosts, Mike Randall and Gus Kearns.
Welcome back to the Screen the Screener College Basketball Podcast, where we continue our motion, our train, our passion to preview each and every one of the 357 Division I college basketball teams. I'm your host, Mike Randall. Follow me on Twitter at RandallRant. Today we have an old favorite here, someone who's provided us great insight on Villanova in the past and can certainly give us a preview here of the upcoming 2021-2022 season for the Wildcats, and that's Joe Giuliano. He covers Penn State football, Villanova basketball, golf, my beloved Penn Relays, all for the Philadelphia Inquirer. Please follow him on Twitter at JoeJulesINQ. Joe, it is a pleasure having you back on the podcast. How you doing?
I'm fine, Mike. Great to be back.
So, Joe, I have to ask, and I've asked everyone this, whether it's coaches or the reporters that cover the team, COVID, how did it affect the team last year? Villanova, I laugh, Joe, because I think back to years ago when Jay Wright was on the chopping block and he was worried that maybe he was going to not be able to coach the team the following year. And look at you now, every single year, top 5. How did it affect the Wildcats last year in what was another Big East championship?
Well, you don't want to, you hate to single out one program over everybody else because, everybody went through the same problems last year with COVID, but Villanova got hit especially hard. Their first COVID outbreak actually came in September, just before their preseason practice was to start officially. And they had to sit out for, it was 2-week quarantine, and then they lost almost another week for cardiac testing to make sure, the kids' hearts were in good shape. Myocarditis is an affliction that a swelling of the heart that is caused by COVID, and they had to make sure that their kids were okay. And then right after Christmas, there was another outbreak. 2 people came down with COVID, and one of them just happened to be named Jay Wright. So they sat out for another couple of weeks, and they returned to practice. Trying to remember the exact date. It was like January 6th or 7th. And after practice, they were assembling to take a bus to the airport to fly to Chicago to play DePaul. And 2 starters, Caleb Daniels and Jermaine Samuels, tested positive. So when you put it all together, you put those back-to-back COVID pauses together with one practice. They went 27 days without a game. And it was, not good for anybody. They just couldn't get in any kind of rhythm. Even late in the season, they were kind of picking up the rhythm a little bit, but they stumbled on the road quite a bit. And it was just one of those years. They lost in the first round of the Big East tournament. They were going for 4 in a row and ended up losing in the first round to Georgetown, who was the eventual champion. And then got 3 games in the NCAA tournament, which is not too bad considering they went in as a 5 seed. So all in all, it wasn't a bad year, but COVID really slowed it down for them quite a bit, and they had to really work hard to get to 18-7.
I was really impressed. Every year, Villanova comes up with a new way to make me say, wow. I mean, the sustained success that Jay Wright has built has been incredible. The one that impressed me this year was when they went through some adversity. They had the great win on the road at Texas December 6th, and I had that one predicted because it just was Texas was flying high, and here comes a veteran Villanova team with multiple national champions, really stepped up with a great win. They had that nice run. Then the loss to St. John's, which was just peculiar, and you sort of brush it off. But the one where I really think I learned a lot is the way they bounced back from Creighton. The Creighton game away, it just got away from them. They got blitzed in that game, but they battled. They did have the tough loss to Georgetown in the Big East tournament, but Georgetown was on some sort of Cinderella run, obviously, as you could see. But then again, they come into the NCAA tournament after losing in the first round at Georgetown, and a lot of people, myself included, liked Winthrop in that game. but they handled Winthrop. Then they took care of business against the upset-minded North Texas, and then they ended up really battling with Baylor in a game that you really thought maybe it was going to be tough for them to win. So I think, Joe, resiliency really showed itself on multiple occasions during the season.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think what Jay loved the most about this team was their resilience. Everybody had their own road to travel. I mean, they were all cooped up in a bubble, worried about people at home and making sure that they were okay. And it was just really a tough time for them. And Jay said several times during the season, he said it's always about team with Villanova, but in this case with the COVID, it was more about the individuals, making sure they were okay, making sure they weren't really getting down because of all the restrictions that they had. Talking about mental health. I mean, obviously it was big in the Olympics, but that's all Jay talked about during the season was mental health, making sure that his kids were okay, and telling them that, hey, if you have to leave for any reason, if you feel like you have to go home and check up on things, he says, you go. He said he wasn't going to hold anybody back from doing, personal stuff if it was needed. So, you had to give him credit for that. Jay is always such a single-minded coach, just thinking about the X's and O's in the next practice and the next game. But in this case, he really, showed compassion and empathy for the kids under his command and making sure that they were okay.
Yeah, not only battling COVID, which of course was very real and the effects that we just don't know short and long term, but of course losing Colin Gillespie, like you mentioned. But that sort of leads us into this year with the players returning. And, you look at Villanova last year, if that is their version of a down year, 18-7, reaching the Sweet 16, the NCAA tournament, I hate to think if they're totally healthy and rolling, but they have a good core of players coming back, don't they, Joe?
Oh, absolutely. The Colin Gillespie knee injury was, you hate to say it was kind of a blessing in disguise, because nobody wants to see somebody with the heart and guts of Colin Gillespie go down for any reason. But, the fact that he had to recover, had to rehab from the surgery, he really wasn't supposed to do anything until mid-June. And by that time, you would have gotten ready for the combine and having, showing off for the NBA scouts, and then going on little individual workouts to various cities and franchises. And Colin just said after a couple of weeks, he said, well, look, I'm not going to be able to, do much at the combine. He says, let me just come back for another year. And Jermaine Samuels, who was a guy who you figured had some NBA potential, said the exact same thing. So Colin and Jermaine actually orchestrated their announcement together and announced that they were coming back for a fifth season. So that was a big deal for Villanova, and they end up only losing Jeremiah Robinson-Earl, who's a big loss, don't get me wrong. I mean, the guy is just so talented and so versatile and can do anything on both ends of the court. But, when you're coming in with just one lost player after all the turmoil of the year, and I say one lost player. They did lose Cole Swider, one of their top bench players.
Went to Syracuse.
Entered the transfer portal after the NCAA tournament ended and went to Syracuse. So those are the only two losses they've had. But they're pretty well loaded and ready to fight another season, looking for another national championship. No one transferred in. They ended up with 4 freshmen. And if you count everybody on the roster right now, they're at their maximum scholarship limit of 13, which is rare for a Jay Wright team. He somehow keeps it to 10 or 11 and saves a couple for a rainy day if needed. But he's got a full plate for this season. But yeah, it was a very stable year. Jay has talked about the transfer portal in the past, and he says the one thing you really have to do is keep re-recruiting your own kids, because sometimes they'll talk to kids from other schools who've transferred, and maybe the grass is greener somewhere else. But they've had a very loyal bunch of players that want to play for him and want to play for each other. And that's one of the keys to the Villanova culture.
You can argue that, Joe, that them having not lost anyone in the transfer portal really, and besides Swider, and not having anyone come in gives them a leg up, because everyone I've been talking to is talking about assimilating new transfers in. That is difficult, particularly when you're balancing it with freshmen who have expectations of playing time. In Villanova's case, they have a strong recruiting class here with Jordan Longino, who's a 4-star recruit, third best player in Pennsylvania, Nana Njoku from Delaware, he's the top player in the state last year, and Angelo Brizzi, who's a 3-star recruit from Virginia. So I guess my question is, normally with Villanova, the freshmen come in and they make a massive impact right away. When you're looking with a team that they have right now, where you're talking about a potential starting lineup of Gillespie, Justin Moore, Caleb Daniels, Samuels, and Eric Dixon, how do you think those freshmen will do? How are they rated coming in? And how do you think they will assimilate during the year?
Well, that's a good question, because you just mentioned the starting five, and that's a pretty tough lineup to crack, especially when you see the guys they have coming off the bench. People like Brian Antoine and people like you mentioned Caleb Daniels, but
Trey Patterson too.
Trey. Well, the deal with Trey Patterson is that he graduated early from Rutgers Prep. He's part of the freshman class, but he already has a semester under his belt on the bench, learning, just what it was like to be in this atmosphere. And Jay loved it that Patterson got to look at the Big East tournament and got to experience the NCAA tournament. So, he comes in with a little bit of an advantage, knowing what needs to be done. And so he's one of the 4 freshmen. But to get back to your point, guys coming off the bench, you have Brandon Slater, you have Brian Antoine, you have Chris Archidiakono, who was a savior for them against Providence.
Played very well.
Gillespie was out and Justin Moore got hurt in the game. So, it's going to be a little difficult for a freshman to break through. Jay doesn't usually like to go any deeper than 9, and if he had his druthers, he would rather go 8 in a game. But we'll see what these young guys bring. I mean, as you alluded to, they've all got credentials to, be a fine collegiate basketball players, and we'll just see how that goes. Right now, they've been part of the summer workouts, and that's helped them, because Jay has only one way to play defense, and that's all out and hard for 40 minutes. So he wants to see that from these kids, and if they deliver that, I'm sure they'll find some playing time for them.
Start your day right with Daily Immune Support Plus Extra Strength 5-Hour Energy. It contains all the great 5-Hour Energy Shot ingredients, plus added vitamins and nutrients like zinc, vitamin D3, and vitamin C to help support the immune system. It comes in 3 great flavors: Ultra Orange, Pineapple Apricot, and Pink Watermelon. All this comes in a convenient portable bottle that takes just seconds to drink. No mixing required. Daily Immune Support Plus Extra Strength 5-Hour Energy. Get it today at your local Rite Aid store.
Myth versus fact. Know what's not a myth? Long COVID. Fact is, it can cause long-term breathing issues in young, healthy people. Learn the facts. Get vaxxed. Visit vaccinate.virginia.gov.
And that's very important, Joe, because I think back to Kentucky. Calipari for a while, certainly was a master of that, of bringing in these I used to say one year 38 stars worth of freshman recruits. Devin Booker, who of course we watched in the NBA Finals against the Bucks, didn't even start for that team. Now this year, I think the challenges, particularly with Villanova also, is going to be meshing highly recruited freshmen with veterans, because very few teams right now are going to be freshman dominated because of the transfer portal. And I think that they're going to be tested in the non-conference. You wrote about for the Philadelphia Inquirer just a few days ago the non-conference games that they've released. Now, the entire schedule I don't think has been released, but Villanova, of course, always going to be a threat in the Big East, but is going to have a strong non-conference as well. Talk about who the Wildcats will see early in the season with this team that is pretty deep.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think the one matchup that everybody's looking forward to is they've arranged a home-and-home series with UCLA. And the first game of that will be out in Los Angeles, out at Pauley Pavilion. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to be, very excited about that situation, because that's going to be quite a quite a game. I mean, it's very possible that these will be 2 top 5 teams meeting in a very, early time. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see how that all works out. And then the Jimmy V Classic announced their doubleheader for Madison Square Garden, and they'll end up playing their old Big East rival Syracuse. And I know Jay's thrilled about that. He always likes to play, keep in touch with the old rivals, and that'll be a pretty decent game there as well. And then you have the Big East Big 12 battle, and that'll be a rematch, Villanova and Baylor. I mean, whoever scheduled that game was pretty smart. But that game will be at Waco, so it'll be a tough haul for Villanova. But we talked earlier about how they went into Austin and beat the Texas Longhorns, and we'll see what happens against Baylor. I mean, Baylor's had quite a few losses to the draft.
Joe, I have to tell you, that Baylor game, I could not, you think about it, and Jay Wright's Hall of Fame coach. Villanova is going to be tough. They have the experience. When they played Baylor, I could not conceptualize a way without Colin Gillespie that they were going to keep that game close. But gosh darn it, 10 minutes left. It was a tie game. So that is going to be a tremendous basketball game. Baylor coming off a national title, and Villanova, who took every one of their punches shorthanded back in March. Yeah,
that was, like you said, 30 minutes. It was a really good game. I really loved the way they played the first half and, shot 50% and had a lead. And Baylor's trying to figure out what's going on because all they were doing was, chucking up threes pretty much.
And Joe, they did that. They did that. I'm sorry. They did that, and they were only 3 of 17 from three-point range in that game, Villanova.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, that's where it all kind of unraveled, where they were, ending up getting behind and then taking shot after shot. That was a house of horrors for them this year. It was Hinkle Fieldhouse. They went 2 for 27 at Butler during the regular season, and then went 3 for 17 in the tournament at the same venue. But Baylor did a great job in the second half of adjusting and driving to the hole and really, taking it to Villanova. And all the credit goes to them.
Joe, I appreciate a few minutes. Last question, of course, I'm going to ask you about the projection. Since 2014, 2015, you're dealing with a Villanova program under Jay Wright, national champions in 2016, national champions in 2018. They were 24-7, 13-5 in the Big East when the tournament was canceled because of COVID. Last year, despite the injuries and all the challenges, yet another first in the Big East, and they got to the Sweet 16. They're going to be a top 5 program coming into this year. They have a strong starting lineup. They have great freshmen, great depth. I mean, I think we're thinking Final Four, Joe. I think, right?
Well, they have a shot at it. There's no question about it. Excuse me. You would think that they're going to be very primed for a run. Obviously, the non-conference schedule is going to be difficult, and the Big East schedule is going to be very hard as well. But, Villanova always goes into the first of the year, as the favorite in the Big East. And I really can't see anything different happening. With Gillespie and Samuels back to provide leadership, it's going to be, a very solid team. And, you try not to be too much of a homer, but you figure that they're going to be, a top 5, top 10 team all season and, ready to go when March Madness rolls around.
Veterans returning, top 20 recruiting class, great Hall of Fame coach. That, to me, is a top 5 team, no doubt, as we head into the season. Folks, Joe Giuliano, amazing job here yet again. Philadelphia Inquirer, covers everything there. Follow him on Twitter, at JoeJulesINQ. Joe, I'm sure we will catch up with you during the season. Thank you so much for a few minutes here as our train continues. I don't know what the next stop's going to be, but of course we had to stop by and see one of the best programs in the country, Villanova.
Thanks a lot, Mike. Thanks for having me.
I'm addicted to the appetite. Reserve a seat in advance. And get cozy in the candlelight, expecting no romance.
Minute Maid slushies are back at McDonald's. And if you'd like to thank me for that information, I'll gladly take a slushie. It's more than a drink. It's a McDonald's drink.
Right now, treat yourself to a small Minute Maid slushie, like the new strawberry watermelon flavor for $1.59. Or try small McCafe frappes and smoothies for just $2. Price and participation may vary. Limited time only. Minute Maid is a trademark of the Coca-Cola Company.
Myth versus fact. Pop quiz. What does not cause infertility or genetic mutations, but can save lives? All the free COVID-19 vaccines that are already protecting millions of people in Virginia. Visit vaccinate.virginia.gov.